Okay, let's set some keys in After Effects. The first thing that we can do is take a layer, and we can focus on one layer at a time. One way that we can work is that we have layers up top. So I'm not going to go over the entire interface. We're just going to work together. I have layers up top. I can go down to New, and I can go down to Solid. The first thing that I can do is change a color if I like. That blue probably wouldn't hurt anything, but I could use something a little more common like white, gray, or black or something like that. So I'll just use white at the moment. I could switch it really at any time. I'll hit OK. 1920 by 1080, that's going to be the size of my scene, size of this composition. It's going to say that it's a white solid one. You could name it something else if you like. Worst case scenario, if you had to make this the composition size, there is this awesome little button down here with which you can make it just by clicking that, okay? Now the pixels we're not worried about. It's going to base it off of the composition. We're fine with that, and I'm just going to hit OK. That white solid goes above everything, so I'll just take this and drag it down here. Next thing is that I'm going to hide some of the layers I don't need. First off, I could take the text and say, well, I think I want the text up this way. So I'll just say maybe there. I don't really know. Again, this is just an example. I'm not making some beautiful composition here. I could click on the guy here and see if it selects him, and it sure did. See that right there? Name your layers. Super easy to see. So I could just offset him there, maybe over there. Kind of use the rule of thirds, all right? So we did talk about that in class, and you could find some of that stuff right down here in these little icons. If I change this to choose grid in guide options, I could drop this down, and you're going to see that I have rulers, guides, grids, proportional grids, title, and action safe. Okay, so I'm not too worried about these, with the exception of, real briefly, title and action safe is going to be what format this thing goes out to and what it's going to be played on. Okay. Computers, they will upscale things and they will show things or display things in a friendly way. They conform really well. Some of the televisions, not so much. Okay, so if somebody's working on an older television, you're going to see that we have what's called an action safe, which is this outer box. An older television might crop into about that area there. Okay, so we wouldn't want our talent to be right here. For instance, if this person was right over here, it's going to cut off part of his face. So if there's an actor there, it would cut off part of his face on an older television or something that's going to upscale this thing a bit. Okay, that's the outer box. It's action safe. The inner box is title safe. Okay, and title safe is going to be for titles. So you see the end credits on a movie, the beginning title sequence. You would generally stay within this or this box right here, these parameters. And that way, if this area where the action safe gets cut off on a television, we still have some padding right here for the text to be. Okay, so it'll have this nice little margin, and then the text will look good. So in this case, I could drag this over. I mean, if it's going to be a part of my scene, I could go maybe halfway with it. If I want to be super safe, I can go right here, and that's fine. I could take this dude and just scale him down a little bit. Hold Shift and kind of put him within that section there, that area. Use my arrow keys to tap it up a little bit. Set that there. And maybe I just want this like that. It's fine. Okay. So I have no particular placement for this. Again, this is just for an example. But this is fine. And that's basically what the action safe is and the title safe. Okay. These would be other formats, and we don't really have to talk about those right now. But these inner lines would be just for other formats. The nice thing about this is it also shows your midpoints. So this is the middle of your scene right here perfectly. But if we had a line down this way, that's the middle or the center. And then this also gives you another guide for that. Okay. I'll go over here. I'll turn off title and action safe. I'll drop this down. There's a proportional grid. So you can see that this is laid out into a proportional, well, layout. And you're going to see that we can use this as a type of rule of thirds. I mean, really, here's the center, but you could break this off into chunks of 2 or 3. We're not going to worry too much about that. I don't know that there is an actual, let's see here. We have some grids in case we need to be a little bit more precise with some of our animations or creations inside of here. My guides are already on. I could show rulers. So this is like the other Adobe products that if I wanted to break this into, and here's kind of an example of rule of thirds here. I can actually just come over here to a ruler, click and drag it. And I would break this up into 3 sections, okay? I'm not worried about being precise. I can get close and get the idea of rule of thirds. So if you remember that in class, we can use guides with which to do that, all right? We could also use guides to block it off, maybe this way. And if you wanted to kind of get the idea of a golden ratio in your head, if you remember that, we also talked about that in class, then you can actually set it up that way, okay? So this can actually be that spiral that leads to this person, or we could design this another way to, you know, kind of reveal things. I'll go here, I'll hide rulers, drop this down, also hide guides, okay? And now I could just animate. So right here for the text, we could play with some text animation, and there's a few different ways of doing it. I can have this selected, go up to File, I can go down to Browse and Bridge. I'll hit no when this comes up. I really have no settings to import. So Bridge is going to open up, and I'm going to see if it takes me to some of my little settings here that I'm looking for. And I might have to actually go to the effects portion of things, because it actually took me to a folder that I kept going to previously. Okay, so let me just minimize that. I can show that here in a minute, but what I'm talking about here are some animation presets. So for text, if I want to play with some of the animation presets, I can drop this down, okay? And I can go down to text, since I'm dealing with text. And then I can go to animate in, and I'll also have an animate out, okay? If I drop down the animate in, you see that I have a few different things going on here, like center spiral. It's going to be an effect that is a preset, so it's going to be animated for me. If I take that, I can click and drag it onto the text, just drop it there. And where my current time indicator is, it's going to matter, okay? So let's see here. I don't think it did what I wanted it to do. Animate in. I could even just have the text selected, the text layer. Double click this. Oh, and we have this here. Right, nothing's dropping on there. Very odd. Let's try a different one. Decode fade in. Right, so this is going south real fast. Let's try dropping it onto the layer. Nothing. Odd. So one thing is that this text came from Photoshop, okay? So I almost forgot that we didn't convert it. And inside of here, it will recognize text from Photoshop. So if I want to work with this, right now it's going to work with it like a layer. So if I were to hit one of my buttons like T for transparency or opacity, I'd be able to key the opacity. And it's acting as though the text is an object. The entire thing is like one image, okay? So to deal with that, it's easy to just come down here and say, well, I would like to use some of the text effects in After Effects. And After Effects recognized that I didn't have that. So I'll just collapse this. You don't really need to. This is just for teaching purposes. Right click on this, and I'll go up to, let's see here. It might be under layer. Let's see. Let me try layer. I thought I was as simple as right clicking on there. Okay, so they kind of hit it a little bit. Let me make this larger. Let me right click again, go up to create. So it's under create now, and it is convert to editable text. So it recognizes it as text. If I click this, now it recognizes it as text and it acts as though it's text. So I could actually change the text inside of here. So if I didn't like text, I can select this, keep clicking on it till it highlights, and I can say, what can we put here? Wear a mask. Right? I don't know. But I could just say, this is, and leave it to the viewer to interpret. But this allows me to change it, and I can really put anything inside of here. So that works pretty nice. And I can now use some of these animations, these presets, okay? If I right click, I don't think that they changed it in here to look at some of the presets. They might have hidden it again. But I could also do, I'm just going to look up here real quick. Yeah, so what I'll do is this. I'm going to right click on one of these. So let's see the decoder fader. Yeah, and the right click's not really working. So I could just drop it onto the text, double click this, it'll drop it onto the text. Or, so I could drop it here, is basically what I was saying, as an object, drop it onto the object, drop it onto the text layer. Or inside of here, when that layer is selected, just double click it. And now I do have a text effect, okay? Something happened there. Let me undo that. Getting some weirdness here. It should just, yeah, there we go. Now it happened. I don't know what that other thing was. So maybe when you're watching the recording, you can let me know. I'll hit the space bar to let it play. And this is what's coming in, okay? The cool thing about this is that that's an already preset animation, if you will. And we can create our own preset animations. Again, that's beyond this lecture. And what we can do is kind of deal with what's there already. To do so, I'm going to hit the space bar. This is my current time indicator. I'll put it back to the beginning. And I'm going to come over here, make sure that layer is selected. I'm going to hit the U key. They call it the Uber key, or they used to. But the U key allows us to see anything that is keyed. Okay? So just to let you know, these are keyframes right here. So those are basic keyframes. They're pretty awesome because they give us an indicator of where the time is happening. So this is where the text is starting to come in. That's where the animation is starting. And this is where the animation is complete. Okay? If I want it to be faster, I simply take this end keyframe and drag it over this way. I don't need that to be 3 seconds long. I can have this come in within a second or less. Okay? Drag it this way. There we go. If I hit the space bar, it comes in a little more quickly within 1 second. So I could even shorten that. I could take the first frame and say, all right, well, I want the image to sit there for a minute. So I'll take the start frame here and move it. And then the animation won't happen until, it hits this first frame. If I want to select both of these keyframes and move them together, I could drag marquee by clicking and dragging my left mouse button, selecting all of them. Or I'll click off of here to the side to deselect them. I can come over here to the start and I'll hit that and it will select all the keyframes within here. So if there was more keyframes, or if there were more keyframes, then they would all be selected. Okay? I can click on any one of these keyframes and move it. So I can say maybe at 1 second, it'll sit there for a whopping second, and then it's going to animate in. So check this out. Hit the space bar to play it. Nice. Much better. Okay? So this is pretty good, and I'm going to keep this nice and short. So I'm going to stop this recording. In the next recording, I'm going to show you guys how to set keys on the other stuff. I could just add an outro. Watch this. If I come to maybe the 3 second marker, I can come over here and I can collapse the animate in, and I'll show the animate out. And I have some of these things, okay? Encoder fade out, that's cool. I can just double click that. And it adds a new effect here, okay? If I hit the U key again, just like this, hit the U key. It should show the end going away this way. And what happened here is that the animation is longer on this thing than the actual composition. So it goes beyond the 5 seconds that we have in here. All right. Here's one way I can do this. I could click on end and I can click on the keyframe and drag it this way. And both of them are going to end up showing. So I'll click off of this keyframe, select it, move on over this way. Let's say at 3 seconds, I can have this go and animate out. The only bad thing is, for some reason, I lost my animate in up here. So if I drop this down, it's very strange. Maybe because it's the same effect. So let's see here. Let me set some keys on this. I guess we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and hit the start over here. And it's a 0, This is at 0. Oh, I guess I could just do it with the end. If I want to get rid of keyframes, you see how I keyed the start? I can actually click on the stopwatch to get rid of keyframes. I only need to click once on the stopwatch to set a keyframe, and I'll click on the stopwatch again to get rid of all my keyframes on the start property. Okay. If I wanted to set another keyframe though and start, I can move this wherever I need it to be, the current time indicator. Instead of clicking the stopwatch again to set a key, I come over here and I click this, okay, to set a key, and it would set a keyframe there. Now I don't need these keyframes, so I'll click the stopwatch next to the start, and it's gone. Okay, so over here I could say, well, I want this to be at 100%, and that's going to be my starting keyframe, and I'll move that to the beginning. Well, I'll just move it over here because I wanted this to start at 1 second. Okay, so I'll move it right about there. It's 1 second mark, and it is at 100% to 0, and I'll have this keyframe there, put this to 0, and now I'm going to have this thing animate in reverse in this case, which that's fine, but I should be able to add the fade in and fade out, and I might have to play with this a little bit, or I can have 2 layers of this, one coming in, one coming out, and I can key the opacities, and those are all just little tricks that we learn over time. In this case, I just want to keep it simple. This is a simple tutorial, a simple beginning to After Effects, and I can use this one just to have it come in and out. I'll hit the spacebar to test it, and it's not bad at all. So I'm going to be happy with that. With this, I'll end the recording, and we're just going to get back into a little something else. We could always adjust these, so that's fine. But we'll come back in here and just set some keyframes on other properties for the other layers that we have. Okay? I'll see you in the next one. Bye.